So I don't normally cover YouTube drama. Sometimes I'll do it, but for the most part, I tend to stay away. I would much rather go after Disney, Marvel, pop culture stuff and make fun of corporations that try to shove us fake diversity down our throats 24/7. That's who I much rather spend my time going after. Now, this particular video is not me going after anybody. It's just me talking about a certain situation that's going on at YouTube right now, simply because it's two commentators that I not only watch, but also participate within the space. Now, obviously, they are much, much, much bigger commentators than I am, but they do inspire. And for two different reasons. Now, who am I talking about? Obviously, I'm talking about Matt Walsh and the Quartering. Now, obviously, if you guys are aware of two of these guys, you should know who they are. If you watch me, I would almost guarantee you probably watch one of them, if not both of them. And they are both highly influential people in their spaces, respectively. And they both tend to tackle issues in different ways. Now, I have certain issues with both creators, and I think both of those issues are kind of culminating into this drama that's going on between the two right now. Jeremy from the Quartering and Matt Walsh over at Daily Wire have been going at it on Twitter over the last couple of days, and the reason being is because Matt Walsh is essentially responding to Jeremy, kind of making a comment about conservative people not wanting to get down and dirty with Gen Z, sort of a thing, and kind of like naming but not really naming people. But let's be real, Jeremy definitely was naming Matt Walsh, even if he didn't name him directly. He definitely mentioned him, especially when he brought up the whole anime and video game thing. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Matt Walsh is completely moronic for what he said about anime and video games, but we are going to get into it, guys. But of course, before we do, consider giving this video a like so you can help push us out into the YouTube algorithm. So we have an article here from Bounding Into Comics, and before I even read this article, keep in mind I never read the articles usually before I film, so I have no idea what this article is going to say. However, I can pretty much almost guarantee that considering it's coming from Bounding Into Comics, they are going to 100% side with Matt Walsh, because Bounding Into Comics is extremely, extremely religious, and they are religious to the point of a fault, unfortunately, and a lot of people usually are, but you'll see why in a minute. So it says, Matt Walsh triggers Jeremy the Quartering Hambly with Christian teaching about moderation and discipline in regards to video games. So right off the bat, the title, you can already tell they're going to pick Matt Walsh's side as expected, but let's see what the article has to say. It says Daily Wire host Matt Walsh recently triggered YouTube personality Jeremy Hambly, aka The Quartering, after he shared pretty basic Christian teachings on moderation and discipline in regards to video games. Walsh tweeted back in March 8th of 2018, video games are a sacred cow because our country is filled with adults who are obsessed with them. That's why we all pretend insanely that there's nothing wrong with or disturbing about a child spending all day killing people in a virtual world. Back in October, Walsh also asked in an all-access Q&A session what his thoughts on anime were. He answered, I think it's all satanic. I have no argument for why it's satanic. It just seems that way to me. All anime seems weird, just bizarre, creepy, and in general, I don't think that adults, whether it's anime or any kind of cartoon, with rare exception, adults should not be watching cartoons in general, I would say. Now, with that being said, before we get further into the article, that is a mega fucking boomer take to have, okay? Just throwing that out there. Obviously, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, and I'm all for that. You can have your own opinion, Matt Walsh, just like I'm going to disagree with some of the stuff that Jeremy has done. 100% he's allowed to have his own opinion as well. But I gotta say, to say that something is satanic and then literally admit in the next word that you have no reasoning for why it is satanic to you, it just is, it's kind of a very weak argument. You know what I'm saying? That's why I don't take what you're saying seriously in that regard, because you're basically making an accusation against something with literally no evidence to back it up. You're just saying, because I feel that way, that's just what it is. It's not exactly the strongest argument to have. Not only that, anime is completely anything but satanic. Obviously, you have certain animes, just like you have certain adult shows, just like you have certain X-rated things that not everybody should be watching. There are certain animes that are just absolutely insane. Yes, they showcase some wild and crazy shit, and you should not be watching it if you are a kid. 100%. There are some stuff that is definitely made for adults only. But to call it satanic and have no reasoning for it other than just, well, I'm just thinking it is not a strong argument to have. So I have a big problem with that. On top of the fact that they come from this self-righteous place where they think that because they are so holier than thou, and they are so almighty, and he is so unbelievably masculine that he just cannot imagine anybody any man sitting down and is spending an hour or two a day just relaxing, playing a video game if that's something he chooses to want to do. Meanwhile, these guys are perfectly fine with sitting around doing fuck all, drinking a beer, and having no issues with that. But God forbid someone wants to sit down and play a video game and de stress for an hour or two. Suddenly it's a fucking problem. So that's why I have an issue with these holier than thou types. But don't worry, we're going to get into Jeremy as well. Now, don't get me wrong, there is some good things that Matt Walsh does. His activism is incredible. The fact that he goes out there and actually does things physically and tries to make change is fantastic. There are some things that he's been able to do, especially in the state of Tennessee, which is just incredible what he's been able to do. And I will always cheer him on for that, especially when it comes to protecting kids. I think that's one of the major things that he is successful in, and I hope he continues to find success doing that. But let's continue into this article and see what more it has to say. It says Walsh would later make it clear he was making an off-the-cuff joke about anime while satirizing Media Matters and the other outlets who ran his remarks as serious. I don't think he was not serious. I think he was 100% serious. I think he's trying to pretend like he wasn't serious as a form of kind of backing off once he got some heat for it. It says he noted these are all things that you might say if you believe that I was not being totally serious when I declared all animation made in Japan satanic. But again, I am serious. If I was joking, I would laugh. Deadpan humor has never been my thing, as you will know. And that is why, in the end, with all that said, anime is still canceled and cast back down into the fiery hell flames from whence it came, he deadpanned. Now, Jeremy Hambley took issue with Walsh's opinions, writing on Twitter, the right's weird obsession with disavowing video games, anime, and social media is why they will never appeal to most of Gen Z. The base is literally dying off, and most of the voices in the community are actively refusing recruits. Now, that's a huge problem, okay, and it is something that is very much real. You have to go after the younger voting base if you're going to have any kind of lasting change within the conservative space. That's absolutely true. Now, Matt Walsh does go after people, but the problem is he goes after people who are already in the space to begin with. I don't really think he's converted many people over to his side, and even if he has, it's nowhere near as much as the left is doing by taking over pop culture, by taking over social media, by taking over video games. Like, that stuff is massive to the left, and they don't even realize it because they're too busy being holier than fucking thou that they never want to even give it a shot. And that's a big problem. It says he then made it clear he was discussing Walsh, writing, Matt's not the only guy saying it. There is some other moron who tweeted animes for pedophiles or something the other day. Walsh will respond to Hambley's criticism where he further detailed his position on video games. Walsh said there are a few points that matter, I think, but you won't be able to hear them if you insist absolutely that no statements even vaguely critical of video games can ever be uttered in your presence. If video games are a religion for you, then there's not much I can say to get through to you. But for everybody else, here's what it boils down to, Walsh continued. There's obviously nothing inherently wrong with video games as the medium, it's just another form of screen-based entertainment. Walsh went on to point out the two things we have to take into consideration with screen-based entertainment of all kinds are the messages embedded in the content and the amount of time spent on the content. I agree with that too. I agree with that, Matt Walsh, 100%. I think everything is good in moderation, without a doubt. That goes for literally everything. But that also, in my opinion, goes for religion too. Because if you are going to be going against people so hard and you constantly want to bring up your religion to the point where it's nauseating, you want to literally constantly mention it and throw it in people's faces and pretend like you are on some moral superiority every single time someone speaks to you, that is also a problem. I'm not trying to tell you to back off on your convictions. I'm just saying sometimes the preachiness comes off a little strong, and you need to kind of dial back the preachiness depending on which your target audience is. Obviously, if you're going against your enemies, who are the left, I'm assuming in this scenario, then yeah, you want to beat them down as much as you possibly can. But if you're trying to talk to someone in the hopes to recruit them or to bring them over to your side, perhaps not being so preachy might help you instead of hurt you. It says, while explaining how powerful screens are at messaging to people and influencing them, Walsh points out, go to any school and you'll find a building full of kids whose values, beliefs, priorities, tastes have been nearly completely determined by the content they spent their days ingesting through the screen. Video games are not the only example of this or even the most potent example, but they also obviously aren't an exception. Walsh isn't the only one to make this argument. The Walt Disney Company CEOs Bob Chapek and Bob Iger have also made this argument. In a response to Florida bill that is now law banning the teaching of gender identity and sexual orientation to students in kindergarten through third grade, Chapek informed Disney employees that they would work around the bill through the content that they create. So one of my issues with Jeremy from the quartering is that he definitely likes to pretend as if he's not doing something when he is. That's my biggest issue with it, right? So like he'll always say, "I've never said I was conservative," but you say conservative things 24/7. He'll say, "I never said I was conservative." But honestly, you will literally make fun of the left all the time. I don't really see you make fun of the right often. I usually see you fight with them now. It's not really you make fun of them like the left, you fight with them. And it's a weird thing because we know that we could just tell that Jeremy votes right leaning most of the time, I would imagine, based off the stuff that he says or the way that he acts. And sometimes when he's on live stream, he's a lot more fluid with it and he lets it out more so than in a video. In his videos, he tends to fence it. In his live streams, it's a lot more out there, especially when they were talking about the Twitter files and they were talking about Elon Musk and whatnot and Rob DeSantis. Like everything was out there. So you can kind of see that Jeremy definitely leans more on the right side of things that he tries to put off. And I feel like he tries to sit in the middle simply because it gives him a better chance at garnering more of an audience because you don't want to piss off too many sides. But again, what Jeremy is saying is more from the pop culture standpoint. And he's right. You should not ignore that. And that is such a boomer thing to do. Like Matt Walsh should not be ignoring social media, should not be ignoring pop culture, should not be ignoring the space of people who he could potentially recruit if he just spoke to them instead of speaking down against them. So in that scenario, I do agree with Jeremy 100%. And I think both of these guys really should sit down and just kind of hash it out and have an understanding that, hey, maybe both of you are wrong and maybe both of you are right at the same exact time. And I really don't think this fighting that you guys are doing lately, it seems like the conservative side of things seems to be fighting nonstop lately. I don't really know why that is. There's a lot of exploding going on in that space. And if there's one thing the left always does well, that is unification. They stand with each other, whether they hate each other or not. They will always be unified in the public space and in the public eye. And that's how the right needs to be if they're ever going to do anything worthwhile. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.